First up, the USFL. Oh, no. The USFL first put out on Thursday. They announced the details of the supplemental player draft. So 80 players are going to join. Notice how they say inaugural draft class. And it was all over social media on Thursday night. The new United States Football League will conduct a 10-round supplemental player draft starting at 7 p.m. that will add 80 players to the inaugural draft class, and the league will provide real-time coverage on through the social media stuff. We'll get to all who got picked in a second, just as what they did in February for the initial phase of the first ever USFL player draft. They'll use the unique analytic modify, a snake system that's equitable for all 8 teams. Jim Pop, USFL Director of Player Administrations. The main difference between previous rounds and tonight on the supplemental draft is that rather than select player by position, teams can select any player that helps complete their 45-man roster. Another difference from the previous USFL rounds is that teams will not be allowed to pass on a pick, which would be dumb. Teams will have 2 minutes between selections during the supplemental draft. Should a team let its time expire in any round without selecting, it can still choose a player, but it risks letting the team on the clock take the player it was considering. There will be 5-minute breaks at the conclusion of each round, and trades between teams are not permitted. Hey, this is kind of sounds like when you're doing your fantasy draft. USFL teams are drafting from a pool of 550 to 600 players who had already signed contracts. This is on top of the other, hundreds of players that they already selected that had signed contracts. So a lot of people, a lot of players are interested in playing in the USFL. Only players who have signed contracts are eligible for selection. Drafted players will report March 22nd to training camp in Birmingham. Oh, we got to change that. At the conclusion of training camps, each team will have 45 players for a league total of 360. Once the season begins on April 16th, each team's active roster will have 38 players plus a 7-man practice squad. And you could follow all this on social media. The first round had the Narlands, followed by Pittsburgh, Birmingham, Houston, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, and Michigan. All right, let's get into some picks. So who was drafted? Some names you might know, some names you might not know, but let's get into it. So the first round, we had Justin Johnson, Ryan William Pope, offensive tackle, Gunnar Vogel, offensive tackle, Jarian Jones, some guys you might, Josh Avery, defensive tackle, a lot of defensive tackles, offensive linemen. I'd be trying to find as many offensive linemen as I could. Round 2, Quentin Meeks, a DB. That name seems familiar. Keith Washington, cornerback. Jojo Tillery, safety. There's some names out there. In round 3, Matthew Burrell Jr., Mike Bell, Malik Harris, defensive end, to name a few. Round 4, Nathan Holley, safety outside linebacker. Sharif Miller, defensive end. Sean Williams, a free safety. Paris Ford, a safety. Armani Dennis. Keith Mumphrey, wide receiver. That name looks familiar as well. I think he played in the XFL. Round 5, we got a tight end. Brock Miller, we got a punter. That's right, punter. And Tyler Rosa, a kicker, also played in the XFL, getting a shot there. Very excited for our special teams friends out there. Malcolm Elmore, safety, is in that, and that was round 5. So we're starting to take kickers and punters at round 5. Round 6, some teams didn't pick kickers and punters in the other version of that, or on the original draft. Let's see, EJ Bibbs, tight end, fullback. Connor Davis, tight end, played in the XFL. Darius Victor, running back, also I believe played in the XFL as well. Round 7, Marlon Williams, wide receiver. Gabriel Sewell Jr., inside linebacker. Joseph Patu, cornerback. Round 8, Jacob Williams, Devin Ross, wide receiver. Ahmad Dixon, safety cornerback. Theo Redding, wide receiver. That name looks familiar as well. Round 9, Tyler Palka, wide receiver and quarterback. Interesting pick there. Matt White, kicker and punter. Max Duffy, punter. Now you're starting to see those special teams guys getting in. Definitely these special teams guy could easily get a shot in the NFL if they really have a good showing in the USFL. Antonio Reed, Paul Terry, running back out there. Alonzo Moore, wide receiver. And finally, Bobby Holly is the last person selected in the USFL draft, fullback, running back, tight end. The rosters are complete. There is no combine. I think they might do something in April for one of the, it's not Hub Football, it's another one. We'll have information about that kind of as a last ditch, just to have some players out there for teams to get. One of the things the knock was with this league was that they weren't picking guys that were necessarily on the older end. They were picking kind of young and up and coming guys. We'll see if the XFL has a different philosophy when it comes to some of these players. But we know that the USFL was always about, hey, we want to pick the younger guys that play with us for a couple of years and then maybe have a shot at the NFL. Now, does this mean that if the USFL is around for, 30 years or, for the next 5 years and they take a 26-year-old, are they going to not have any interest in them if they're 28? We'll just have to find out. But there it is. All the teams are full. And next up is training camp.